Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. On the line, we have Solomon Elimimian, CFLPA President, and Brian Ramsay, Executive Director of the CFLPA. During today, they'll open with some introduction remarks. Then we'll go to Q&A. During today's Q&A, we'll have 2 questions each to start. And there will be an opportunity if you have other questions towards the end to ask again. We just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to ask their questions in the time frame that we have here. Please state your name and your outlet, and please direct your questions to Brian or Solomon. Solomon, if you'd like to begin.
Thanks, Eric. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining our call today. As you guys all know, the CFLPA Bargaining Committee, including members of the executive, our council, and various player reps, have been actively meeting and negotiating with the CFL for the past several months to amend the existing CBA with an aim to play as many games as possible for the 2021 season. On Wednesday, June 9th, the CFLPA Bargaining Committee presented a memorandum of agreement to the CFLPA player reps, who reviewed and ratified the agreement in accordance to the CFLPA Constitution. The CFLPA Board of Governors voted yesterday in favor of the ratified MOA. Brian and I are here today to answer your questions surrounding the 2021 season. I would like to thank all of you for coming today. I also want to thank everyone involved with our association who's worked tirelessly day and night. The past 14 months, it hasn't been easy, but today is the day we worked very hard to get to this spot. To all the fans, it's been a long wait, and we thank you for staying with us as we prepare for the season. I want to pass things over to Brian before we open things up for questions. Brian?
Thanks, Solomon. It's great to be on the call today and back talking CFL football with everyone. As Solomon noted, it has been a long and challenging 14 months, and we'd like to thank our bargaining committee, executive, player rep, staff, advisors, and membership for working so diligently on our return to the field. We would also like to thank each of you in your roles who have continued to cover and bring attention to our membership and sport during the toughest of times over this past 12 and 14 months. Thank you. We will do our best today to answer all questions, but we will not use our limited time on interpreting the collective agreement, but rather like to speak to the questions on the amendments for the 21 season. With that, Eric, can we please open up for questions?
Yes, please, PJ. If we can open for questions now. Thank you, Brian and Solomon.
No problem. Thank you. The floor is now open for Q&A. If you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. When it's your turn, you will hear when your line is unmuted. The moderator will say, caller, go ahead. At this time, please introduce yourself and ask your question. If you have any additional questions, please press star 1 to be re-entered in the question queue. Caller, go ahead.
Gentlemen, it's Dan Barnes with Post Media. Brian, this is for you off the top. Just wonder if you could tell me, what do you believe the most important amendment that you agreed on? Apparently, according to Dave Naylor, there was 19 amendments. What's the most important in terms of the welfare or the financial welfare of players?
Thanks, Dan. I think the most important part is getting the amendment and getting our members back to work. I mean, that was our focus right from the onset. Within the agreement, we've been able to secure and work through some rigorous safety protocols and in the inclusion of some committees, while also retaining the ability for the players to maximize their earning potential this year. So, but first and foremost would be getting the memorandum done and getting our members back to work.
And for Solomon, I wonder if there's any detail around testing. How often players will be tested for COVID-19, whether they will continue to be tested if they're double vaccinated or not, and perhaps even, although this is maybe not a question for you, what this might cost the league.
So those are things we found in our return to play committee, and ultimately the provincial health, they'll have various standards for testing. So that'll be made public at some point, but we just let our players know just to, be flexible. And what we have down right now, they might change due to, decisions from government, but there will be stringent testing throughout.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Next question, please, PJ.
All right, caller, go ahead.
Hey guys, Justin Dunk from 3 Down Nation. For both of you to answer, I'm curious how you feel the CFL Board of Governors were different in voting no from 2020 to voting yes this time around from your conversations with the league.
Okay, Justin. Well, go ahead, Saul. Go ahead.
Sorry. Just, I mean, in terms of what they're thinking, I really can't speculate in terms of what was said in that room. But I think everybody realized the ramifications of not having the season, 2021. I think we worked very hard last year, to get to a point where they had to make that decision. And it was the same thing this time. Our job is to put together the best packs for the players to get back on the football field, but ultimately they have to make that decision. I think when you look at, potential ramifications of not having a 21 season, it's, that can be understated. So I'm glad they made the right decision. Everybody seems, very relieved. Everybody's happy from the player standpoint to get back on the football field. So, one more step in our goal of getting players back to work.
Yeah, I think Solomon did an excellent job answering that. I mean, our focus wasn't on the decision made by the governors as it was their decision. Our focus was on removing and taking care of the things that we needed to make sure that our members were in a position to get back to work. And as Solomon said, we're excited that the Board of Governors made the right decision this year to play CFL football.
And can you guys give a sense of the amount of compensation the players will get on the contracts that they sign? Like, is it in and around, 80, 90% when you factor in the cues that they could potentially get? Like, you guys have a number that you've sort of worked out that way?
I think it's difficult, Justin. I mean, it's a good question, but I think it's difficult to do with the individual nature of the contracts, depending upon that. What we know is, and Solomon mentioned the word the package before, we've looked at it as a complete package, and we understand what it's going to mean for with the shortened season, the 14, 18 games. But I think it's quite difficult to just put a percentage on it, knowing that there's additions, as you mentioned, the cues and different pieces like that. But it really has to reflect the individual contract.
And I'll just add the overall feedback that we got, certainly from our player reps, was positive. Speaking to players, it's been positive. And like Brian said, the overall package with the cues and the compensation and really, taking away any stumbling blocks from the health and safety aspect, I think guys are satisfied and, are pretty relieved, with this package. They're happy to get back on the football field.
Thanks, PJ. Next caller, please.
We have no more questions at the moment. Caller,
PJ,
go ahead.
can you? Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, it's Dan Barnes again from Post Media. I just wonder if you guys have an opinion on the fact that there's training camp but no preseason games. And looking at the schedule, there are some pretty tight turnarounds, 96 hours between games, which I think is pretty much the minimum guaranteed by the CBA. So do you have any concerns, first, about no preseason games, and second, about any tight turnarounds?
Well, I think, Dan, I think there's definitely some challenges going into the season, and we knew that. And some of the protocols that we're able to specifically now talking about training camp and define and include in that, we believe gives an opportunity for the members to prepare for the rigors of a season, but also do it in the safest way possible. And understanding the season schedule, as you mentioned, there isn't anything in the current schedule that breaches the collective agreement. It was important for us to focus on ensuring that there's appropriate rest for the players in between games.
And just to add on that, I think everybody knows that this is going to be a year that we have to, be flexible. Have to understand there's going to be challenges, not just, with the season being shortened, but also with the government restrictions. And when we looked at the season schedule, it doesn't violate the collective agreement. Health and safety was a priority of ours. In terms of training camp, we will be talking to the league in terms of making sure that guys, have a training camp where guys can get back on the football field, and, minding that health and safety is going to be important. So we'll collaborate in terms of, things that might happen, like scrimmaging with various teams. So all in all, flexibility is something that guys understand. It's not the ideal year, but we'll work through, and, we'll be happy to get back on the field.
And one more. It's my understanding that there are 5-member taxi squads on each team that are there in case of injury shortages and not enough players through quarantine that all teams can access. Was the trade-off for that, 5 more players basically on a practice roster agreement, was the trade-off for that losing somebody off the active roster?
Dan, on the taxi squad, on the addition of that, I mean, the taxi squad is, Solomon used the word flexibility, and as we're working through a pandemic, the creation of that taxi squad is a great example of working to find solutions when dealing with some of the restrictions that the pandemic has created. Now, those additional 5 players can be interchanged between teams, and you're right, it does speak to the restrictions that are in place with the quarantines that are needed if crossing the border and things like that. But there's also a clear understanding that it becomes unoperational after the restrictions are lifted. So when we looked at that and discussed that, it was a way to find a solution around some of the current restrictions that are in place because of the pandemic.
Good stuff. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dan.
Eric, we have no more questions at the moment. I'm sorry, we just got another one. I apologize.
Great, thank you.
Caller, go ahead.
Hey guys, Justin Dunk back again from 3 Down Nation. Overall, when you guys are going over the amendments that were made with the players, what was their reaction? Were they really happy? Did they feel like it was a good, let's call it COVID CBA, or what was the general reaction from the membership?
Thanks, Justin. Go ahead, Sol.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I think Solomon touched on it before. I think the player reps, having worked through these conversations over the last summer and this last year, had a very clear understanding of where we were and how we got there. And as we continue to talk with the membership, there's satisfaction because it accomplishes what we set out to do, and that's get our players back, get our members back on the field. And I think that's the feeling that I've heard and Solomon's heard in our conversations over the last couple of days.
Yeah, and for me, this is one of the proudest I think our association has had, just because of the amount of guys that really, miss football and guys who played football for, many parts of their life, and not to have it last year, I think it really hit guys hard. Obviously, it's a way that, guys take care of the family and make a living, and not having that was definitely tough and really hurt guys. And, I got a lot of texts from guys that saying thank you. They're happy to be playing this year. One guy texted me, he said, "Oh, I can't believe it. Are you sure we're back? Is this a trick?" I told him that, in terms of where we're at, things look like, we're going to the right direction of playing football again. So it just means a lot, because I know how hard so many people worked, from our association to people in the CFL, working on the return to play health committee, countless hours, countless months of trying to get us to this spot where, we are closer to getting back on the football field. And a lot of people forget, this is not just a hobby for guys. It's how they make a living, right? So when that was taken away from them, it hurt, but, this is good news. And I think from the fans, the players, everybody, gets a sense that, the CFL will be back, and it's a good step, good step in the right direction.
And when you guys were talking with the league, was there any amendment made for, if the single game betting legislation gets passed and is legal and benefits the CFL financially this season, that can then, let's say, kickstart a clause with the PA and the players could potentially see more money from that financial windfall?
No, that wasn't discussed in the amendments for the CBA this year.
Do you see that being discussed in the future?
Yeah, sorry, Saul, was that? Or yeah, for sure, Justin. I think that's something that everyone's got their eyes on. The focus right now, in the last specifically 4 or 5 months for us, was making sure that we're getting our members back to work. We're obviously watching how things are working across the country, and on an issue like that, of course, we're watching closely. But our focus on these amendments were to get our guys back to work for this 21 season.
Thanks, Justin. PJ, can we go to the next caller, please?
Yes, sir. Caller, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Dan Barnes again. Last one for me. Your bargaining committee has now negotiated amendments in 2020 and 2021, and you guys get to do it all again in 2022. So, Brian, this is for you. Do you expect more ease or a better spirit of cooperation, knowing that you have to do this basically, whatever it is, 10 or 11 months from now?
Yeah, I mean, the process for us, Dan, starts much earlier than that, and I think one of the strengths of being able to find solutions is when you have some continuity. And for our group internally here, I think that there's a big portion of it that have worked through 19, 20, 21, as you said, and being able to find amendments to this year's collective agreement, get back on the field for 21. I believe there is an opportunity to take that momentum into the discussions. Our agreement expires next May, and we're hopeful that we can sort of take this and work towards the changes that are going to be required to strengthen the league and our members and the relationship between the two of us.
And was there any dialogue at all between players and league over whatever is happening with the XFL?
In terms of the amendments for the 21 season, no, there was not, no.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Dan. PJ, is there another caller?
There's not at the time.
Can you just remind anyone on the line how to ask a question?
Yes, sir. If you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. When it is your turn, you will hear yourself being unmuted, and I will say, caller, go ahead. Then you can introduce yourself and ask your question. All right, we have a question queued. Caller, go ahead.
Yeah, Jean Saint-Onge from Radio-Canada Montreal. The question is simple. Minimum salary was supposed to be $65,000 a year for Canadian and American players for an 18-game season. What will it be this year?
Thank you very much for the question. The minimum salary will be prorated to 14/18 of the $65,000.
So that's $50,554.
I do not have the exact number right in front of me. Yes, but if I can tell you it's 14/18 of the 65.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
PJ, is there another caller?
Yes, sir. Caller, go ahead.
Right. Justin, I'm from 3 Now Nation back again, and sort of along those lines, you guys often know a lot of players have signing bonuses, obviously, which are dealt at the time of signing, but active roster bonuses or first game active roster or travel money. Do the players get all of that money and it's just the base salary that's 14/18, or how does that all work for the different stipulations?
Thanks, Justin. So salaries, as you mentioned, off-season bonuses, report and pass, and playoff money will be all paid in full. Salaries and bonuses within the season will be prorated to the 14/18 to align with the short and regular season.
So if somebody has like a first game active roster bonus, they would get all of that money, and if they have a travel allowance, they would get all of that as well?
Prorated to the 14/18, correct, yeah.
Oh, it would be, which part would be prorated?
all off-season money up until the report and passes are paid in full. Base salaries and bonuses within the season, housing allowance, performance bonuses will be prorated to the 14/18 for the shortened season.
Gotcha.
Postseason money is paid in full.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Justin. PJ, is there another caller? I just received a message that there may be some on the line who've been waiting, but maybe we haven't been able to get their question yet.
I do not see another caller at the moment. To whoever is that individual, please make sure you are pressing *1 and then waiting for the prompt.
Are there any questions in the queue?
They're not at the moment.
I think it's Dan Ralph who's waiting to ask a question. Are you able to identify his line and unmute it? Or no?
1 second. Yes, sir, I can.
Thank you.
Hey, holy
go ahead.
smoke. Thank you. Brian and Solomon, I mean, it was reported that there were the 19 amendments. Is that correct? And is it possible to get what the amendments are for roster size, the global designation, and also what is the exact PR number?
Yeah, sorry, Dan, you broke up a little bit there towards the end. I think I got it all. If I don't answer it, please come back. I believe there was more than 19. You know what? I don't have the exact number of amendments, but today we're not going to go through all of them line by line. But you asked a specific question about the roster.
Yes, sir.
And sorry, that's where you broke up. Can I get you that?
Sure. I was asking what the specific roster for 221 will be, and what the global designation would be, and what the exact practice roster number will be.
Yeah. Okay. Loud and clear. Thanks, Dan. So maximum, the rosters for this year will be a maximum of 44 plus the one reserve, the minimum of 43, and there will be one global player designated on it as well.
And the practice was right?
Practice roster, practice roster. There's no change. It will be at the same number, 13, and with the addition that we talked about was the taxi squad, which is separate from the practice roster. Yeah.
And last question, if I may, just to detail on what Dan was talking about. What your thoughts are on the fact that you and the PA and the league have been holding a myriad of talks since the last CBA. Is there a much more better understanding where both are, and does that sort of bode well going into a new CBA discussion at season's end?
Well, we hope so, Dan. I mean, the more you talk together, I think the more you understand. And over the last couple of years, going back 1920 to 21, there's sure been a lot of discussions between the two groups. So I think there's a hope that we can take this momentum and, as I said, sort of use that going forward in our discussions that we know are upcoming, and hope to get to a spot where we continue to strengthen the league, strengthen for our members, and by doing that, work on and strengthen the relationship between the two groups.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Is there another caller on the line?
We have none queued at the moment.
Okay, can you just read the instructions one more time, and if there's no other callers after that, we'll end the call today.
No problem, sir. If you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. When it is your turn, you will hear when your line has been unmuted, and I will say, "Caller, go ahead." At that time, please introduce yourself and ask your question. If you have any additional questions, please press *1 to be re-entered in the question queue.
More questions?
No, sir.
Okay. I think we will end today's call. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and taking time out of your day to join Solomon and Brian to talk about this exciting development. And Brian or Solomon, do you have anything else that you'd like to say?
Just for me. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was just, Solomon, I think we're probably going to say the same thing, and it's exciting to be able to talk about football again, and we're excited for our members to get back to work and some of the challenges, and again reiterate the appreciation we have for the continued work that everyone's done on this call to continue the discussion around the sport. We're excited to start 21, and Solomon, I'll pass it over to you.
Well said, Brian. I just want to thank everyone for making this call today. Appreciate everyone's commitment over the last, 15 months. It hasn't been easy, but thank you for the interest in CFL. It's a great game that we all love, and hopefully we'll be talking about guys catching the ball and scoring touchdowns or making big sacks this year, man. So thank you very much for joining the call, and it's appreciated on my side. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, and thank you, PJ, for hosting us today. With that, we'll end the call.
Thank you. This concludes today's event. You may disconnect and have a great day.